Hey everybody, Niall Doherty here from jQuery tutorials for beginners.com. This is our fourth lesson, even though it says lesson 2 here. That's just a look at the homepage of the website where you can get source code and lots more tutorials and things. So check that out if you're looking for a little bit more detail on these tutorials. As I said, lesson 4, what we're going to go through in this one is event handlers. So far, if I take you back to where we left off last time, we just had something working when the page loaded. So let me open up that page, index.html, we'll drop it in there. So we just had this working. So as soon as we refresh the page, it comes up with this thingy. But we don't just want to do that. We want to have something working when we click a link, for example. We want to have something showing up. So that's the type of thing we're going to do in this tutorial. We're going to start with the click event because that's just the most common thing we can work with. So the first thing we need to do is we need a link that we can click. So let's start with a list here. So unordered list, open and close, put in our list item, and enter list item, and we'll just copy and paste that. So we have first item, second item. I'm going to make this first item a link. We're going to make it link to google.com, which is a website I'm sure you've all heard of. So we just have google.com. We're going to keep it nice and simple here. So obviously I should have title tags and those sorts of things in here, but we want to keep it simple. So now if we reload our page, our alert is still there. We have first item, second item. Great, we have our link. And if we click our link, it takes us to Google. And then back. Okay, we need to get rid of that alert because it's getting very annoying. So let's delete this. That was our alert. We're back up now into our little jQuery section. So we're coding our jQuery up here, down here where we're doing the HTML. Alright, so we're going to need to write some simple code to basically tell the page that when we click on the link, we want something to happen. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, I'll explain this in a second. I'll just write it out for you first. Function. And then we're going to close off those like that. And we'll space it out a bit so we can see what we're doing here. So now we've said that for any A on the page, this A here relates to this A here. So it's anchor. So we're saying for any anchor on the page, when that is clicked, we want the following function to happen. And that's going to be whatever we have in here. So what do we want to happen? Well, we're going to keep it nice and simple again, and we'll just make an alert. So we will say, you click the link. Okay, now if we go to our page, refresh, no annoying pop-up straight away this time. But when we click here, we get you click the link. So that's great, it's working. But there's a small problem in that if we click OK, it's going to take us to Google. Now, you may want that to happen because after all, that's what it links to. But say if you didn't want to actually go to Google, you just want that message to appear. Well, what you could do, real simple, is say return false, like that. So that's basically saying whatever the default behavior is when you usually click on a link in this case, we don't want you to do that with default behavior. We're going to return false on the default behavior. So now if we refresh the page and click on this, we get a little alert, but it doesn't take us to google.com, which is nice and handy. However, that's not the best way of doing it. Return false is not actually a good way of doing it. It'll work for most cases, but if you get deep into jQuery and you keep using return false, it may cause unexpected problems. So what you want to do instead is use preventDefault. And if you want to know exactly why you should do that, I'll have a link in the blog post associated with this video to this great explanation by foodyourcoding.com, and it tells you exactly why you don't want to use return false, and instead you will want to use prevent default. How do I spell default? Default. Prevent default. But what we got to do is we got to say event.preventDefault, and then up here in our click function we'll have to say event. We have to name the function. So basically saying when this event happens, we want to prevent the default action of that event. So let's check if that works. It should work the exact same, at least from our perspective, as return false. Click that. Doesn't go to google.com. Perfect. Now, event here, this could actually be anything. We could call this whatever and whatever. And it will do, refresh that, do the exact same thing for us. Okay, so it doesn't take us to google.com. So we're just going to keep it as event because it's just easier that way. So use prevent.default instead of return false because there's good reasons for it. And as I said, you can read more about that if you follow the link in the blog post to, what was it again? Whatever the name of that website was. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of event handlers. We just use click. Click was the one I just showed you. And if we go to jQuery.com, and I will have this linked as well from the blog post, this is a whole list, a big list of all the events that are available to you with jQuery. There's click that we just used. There's double click, so you might want something to happen when you double click on a link. There's lots and lots and lots here, and it gives you explanations for each of them. Let me just show you another two of the more common ones that you might want to use. You might want to use hover. Okay, now we can actually, for this, we can take out our prevent default because there's no default action when you hover over something, unless you change the link or whatever, or change the color rather. But for our case, we're going to keep it simple. We don't even need that, so we're going to take it out. So now let's go back to our test page. Now when we hover over, there it is. But the problem with hover is that when we go on it and off it, this thing keeps coming up, which is a bit annoying because we don't want it to happen twice. So a better option than hover in this case may be mouse over. So let's see how that works. Refresh the page, mouse over, okay. So now we move it off, nothing happens. It only happens on mouse over. So no little duplicate there. So there's lots of ones that event handlers like this. Some of the differences between them are kind of subtle, but they all have their uses, and you can look through that list and figure out which one is best for you. There's always going to be something there to do what you need it to do. So that's the end of this tutorial. That's a simple introduction to event handlers, and feel free to play around with those. I will have the source code for this all in the blog post, so you can just grab it all, copy and paste, and then start tweaking so you don't have to write it all from scratch. Next tutorial that I'm going to go through will be adding and removing CSS classes. So changing how elements on the page will look just with a simple click or with any other event handler function that we want to use. So it's going to start getting a little bit more dynamic as we build and build on this. Once again, my name is Niall Doherty. Everything you need for these more tutorials, all the source code, head on over to jQuery tutorialsforbeginners.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link right below the video. And I will see you next time. Bye bye.